Welcome to a new season of Begley's Mailbag, where we answer your questions about the Knicks and the NBA. We're going to start off with the bench warmer post, and they want to know what would be considered a successful season and a failure of a season. Now, I think that you're looking at win total. I think you want to be around 39, 40. And in that instance, the Knicks can say, hey, we took a measurable step forward from last season where we struggled. And I think particularly within the season, you want to see at least one of those young players kind of take a big step forward, because, you know, you held out on the Donovan Mitchell trade talks, and clearly you value your young players based on those negotiations. So, you know, one of these players should take a big step forward. So I think if you get to 39, 40 wins and one of the young guys, two of the young guys pops, I think that's a successful season. And I think if you get to, 42 wins and you rely on the veterans, but everybody plays okay, I think you could define that as success too. But if you're talking about a failure, I don't think we're talking about win totals, right? So I would go with a regression, back to 33 wins or so, or if the Knicks win 33, 35 games, but rely heavily on the veterans and the young guys have limited roles. I don't know if that would be termed a success. That's at least how I see it, but it doesn't really matter what I think. It matters what Knicks owner James Dolan thinks after an offseason where the Knicks were heavily involved in those Donovan Mitchell trade talks, ultimately deciding to stand pat. I think they do need to show measurable progress at the end of this year. Next, we'll go with one from Cool Clyde 10, who wants to know, how can the young Knicks focus on the upcoming season with all the trade chatter? Now, this is a great question because NBA players are human beings, right? And so I'm sure that there was some frustration among some of the players who were mentioned in these trade talks for Donovan Mitchell and other players. These guys are pros, but they're also young. So maybe it was the first time for some of them where they saw their name really out there. One thing I can say, though, is that with regards to RJ Barrett, Utah had wanted Barrett in a deal for Donovan Mitchell, and there were some packages that the Knicks had discussed with Utah that included RJ Barrett. Didn't include 3 first-round picks, but included RJ Barrett. So, I think it's natural to wonder how Barrett would react to that. I think RJ Barrett is a professional. I think he's wise beyond his NBA years, and I think he understands that whatever feelings he has about being included in those trade talks or not, or whatever the case may be, he's going to compartmentalize that, and he's going to be focused on the season. He's not going to let it impact him in a negative way, at least to where it spills out publicly and there becomes a public issue with Barrett's frustration with the team. I can't see that happening. And really, I'd be surprised if Barrett even let it impact him as he's working on his game, at the practice facility, whatever the case may be. I think he is pretty mature in his NBA years and has the ability to kind of put that to the side and focus on his job. I don't know specifically about the other guys, but I'm pretty confident in saying that about RJ Barrett. Next, we've got a query from Camille Khan. Camille asks about Cam Reddish and Reddish's future with the club. Well, I know that coming into camp, there were people within the Knicks that were big supporters of Cam Reddish and wanted to see him get an opportunity to earn minutes in the preseason and training camp. Will he get those minutes in the regular season? We'll find out. Will he get that role? But I do think that just in the immediate future, I don't think there's going to be a rush to trade Cam Reddish, because the Knicks are going to need depth, right? There's going to be injuries. Things are going to come up where guys aren't going to be available. So you're going to need players who maybe are on the outside of the rotation on Monday. You might need them on a Friday. So I don't see a rush to move Cam Reddish. But with regards to the trade deadline and what might happen there, I know that the Los Angeles Lakers had significant interest and have had significant interest in Reddish at different points during his Knicks tenure. So I think the Knicks also got calls from a couple other playoff contending teams in the offseason about Reddish. So I would assume that the interest would still be there, regardless of whether Reddish gets a significant rotation role with the Knicks or doesn't, just because of his age and the skill set that he possesses. So when you talk about the trade deadline, or even in the offseason when Reddish is going to be a restricted free agent, I do think teams will continue to call the Knicks about Reddish and just kind of gauge their thought process and where they are with them. Next, we've got one from my longtime Twitter buddy, Erwin Glenn. Erwin Glenn wants to know, will Tom Thibodeau take advantage of the deep bench that he has and play them more minutes? Now, if you look at the preseason, which I don't like to judge a lot on what happens during the preseason, but there was a decent minutes allotment over the course of the rotation. And so it wasn't just starters heavy. Tom Thibodeau, over the past couple of years, has shown you that, he will lean on veterans and will lean on his starters to play significant minutes. I would assume that given the complexion of the roster, the depth of the roster, that you'll see a more even distribution of minutes between starters and the bench. And, particularly Tom Thibodeau talks a lot about, Derrick Rose being back and the strength of that bench with Rose healthy and Isaiah Hartenstein and Obi Toppin and the other reserves in that unit. He really likes that second unit. So I would assume that the plan coming into the year, at least, is to have a good distribution of minutes evenly over the rotation here, and it's not going to be as starter heavy as it had been at some points in the past here under Thibodeau. So yeah, I'd be surprised if the starters, Randle, Brunson, guys are logging 40 minutes a night and the reserves are not getting a lot of tick. I think it's going to be a little bit more evenly spread out this year. We've got a question here from Danny B. You think it's possible for Jalen Brunson, RJ Barrett, and Julius Randle to all average more than 28 games this year? I don't think so. I think one of those three would have to take a back seat if the other two are going to average more than 20. I don't know, because of the Knicks offense and the way the ball at least was moving in the preseason, it doesn't seem like somebody is going to get, or two people or three people are going to get enough shots on a nightly basis to get to 20 over the course of a season. So I think maybe two of the three average over 20, but I can't see a scenario where all three average over 20 and everybody else is kind of in a supporting role. It seems to me that this team is built more on the depth and the idea that up and down the roster, up and down the rotation, you can get scoring from different people on a night-to-night basis. So I'd be surprised if it was that heavy leaning towards Brunson and RJ Barrett and Julius Randle in terms of points per night over the course of this year. We've got one here from All Things Knicks. By this year's trade deadline, will we finally see Julius Randle in a different uniform and Obi Toppin can finally become our starting power forward? Now, I have to say, I really respect All Things Knicks' passion, because I think every time there's an Obi Toppin issue, or even if it's not an Obi Toppin issue, I'm seeing this person hammer home the points of Obi Toppin, why he needs to start, why he needs more playing time. So, I mean, listen, there's passionate fans in New York, but this Obi Toppin fan in particular takes it to another level. I respect it. I would say that in terms of trading Julius Randle and trying to create more minutes for Obi Toppin, I think it depends on how this season goes, right? If the Knicks are winning games, if they're at expectations or exceeding expectations, but it's clear that, they're a cohesive group and they're competing night in and night out, tied together, heading to that February trade deadline. I would assume that Leon Rose, just based on his history at the trade deadline, basically doesn't make a major move and kind of keeps the group together and allows it to play out the season. But if things are going sideways, right, if the Knicks are struggling and it's clear that this roster, as currently constituted, is not working, I could see management going for a bigger swing at the deadline because of what we talked about earlier, the idea that this group, I think, needs to show significant progress, tangible progress this season. So if they're scuffling again as we approach February, I could see them taking a big swing, which would include a move like trading a Julius Randle just to try to shake things up in an effort to get going in the other direction. Because, after last year and everything that transpired this offseason, clearing the cap space to sign Jalen Brunson, I really think this club needs to, like I said, get a few more wins than last year and show everybody, including ownership, that they're on the right path. Thanks for the questions, everybody. Definitely keep them coming because we'll be doing mailbags all season long.